Hey traders, good afternoon. It's Samantha LeDuc of LeDuc Trading. It is about 2:45 Eastern Time. Markets are still open, and I had this idea that it has been a little bit since I did a YouTube video. This is new, if you will, in regards to my channel. I have, thank you very much, by the way, a good number of kickoff subscribers, and I mentioned the more subscriptions I get, the more content I will upload. To that end, I did do 2 videos, half hour each, that were related to my IPO theme, long, that started actually back in November, followed that up aggressively, and then gave a little review publicly, if you will, on price targets and chart setups and such, and did a, it's still rocking. So basically, those price levels still apply, and I'll be touching upon some of those in this video as well. So this is where I reside, if you will, looking for good fishing setups and trade for a living and support clients who do the same. Primarily, for those who follow me on Twitter and StockTwits and such, you know I run a trader education service. It's for primarily professional retail clients, but also allocated trading for institutional clients. And that takes the form of a trading room live, as well as brokerage triggered trade alerts and lots of analysis that I am trying to capture, macro to micro, which means the backdrop is economics, fundamentals, technical, intermarket sentiment, and then wrapping that all up into actionable trade ideas and setups. And they're very specific, low risk entries, if you will, and then stop loss and profit targets. So what I thought I would do first and foremost was highlight a theme, not the IPO theme, which has worked extremely well and is still working in select cases. And I did mention that it was the basket trading theme was likely over now, needed to be selective. I'll go over some of those that continue to work. And then yesterday, this is my my Twitter handle. Last night, I said, don't at me, but I think value is about ready to make a roaring comeback. Now, I have a thesis that I have been writing about obsessively after coronavirus, which is a big deal, by the way, but it was that we were going to have a reflation impulse, and that we would have these, oversold value plays reflate, and that also implied that rates would, yields would pop, bonds would pull down, with it gold, and also we would have, just that lovely, if you will, reflation potential in oil and commodities. So I really felt strongly that it was going to happen today. So I tweeted that last night, and I put together lots of articles for my clients the last 5 days in regards to hold on. In regards to banks as part of the reflation trade, value, hear me roar. This is very much where I think, Chinese stimulus is going to fuel the, or put a put, if you will, in the commodities market. We got our rug pull, which I was anticipating. In fact, my prior week's newsletter to clients was while waiting for the rug pull, and then we got our rug pull. So I have been on this theme that we were going to come into some very clear price targets for interest yield and bond, reversion and such. I'm still waiting for oil and gas plays to really stabilize and reverse, but in the meantime, some other plays have been working extremely well, and I wanted to kind of go over that. And that's what I basically wanted to talk with you about today. So we had some big market moves today because we gapped up. And I mentioned at the open, it looked like a 2% day. We are now at this almost 3 o'clock hour, 2.2% up in NASDAQ and 1.75% in the S&P. This is very strong. So I was very comfortable in making this call. Actually, yesterday, my levels, when I sent out the fishing plan for the week basically, and then Monday in particular, that we had this huge repo transaction conducted in the weekend, Sunday overnight, if you will, by the Chinese government to mitigate the market risk, right? So that's ginormous, like never happened like that before. So sure enough, markets stabilized there and here. This was a little bit delayed reaction, but we moved very aggressively higher. All right, so what I want to do in this video is go over how I approach the trading day for clients, and specifically I do come in with an idea for the S&P. In other words, the levels bullish and bearish, both for intraday trading, but also for staying with the trend. So for example, my fishing plan for the week mentioned I was bullish above 3270, bearish below 3225. So in the middle is kind of chop, if you will. But that is not to say that this is separate from macro themes, if you will. I definitely have macro themes regarding when bonds would reverse and yields would pop, the dollar grinding higher, the effect on gold. Definitely sector rotation in the case of the IPOs, for example, which I have highlighted in my YouTube. But I've had other trade themes that have been obviously very productive for clients that you don't know about because you're on the outside and you should come on in. But palladium and platinum from November, also the oil trade long into January 7th, the oil trade short from January 7th. There are many themes that I am presenting, if you will. Clients can do with it as they please on their own time frames, their own risk tolerance, but there's info basically as to why I am bullish or bearish, particular, if you will, inflection points, and that's really where I spend a lot of my time. One of them, for example, was buy bonds where zirconia. It's a joke, obviously, but it was specifically to come up with where I saw, it was back on January 29th, and where I saw the rates coming into. So we played TLT long, and then my 10 reasons for a bond reversal once we hit that target, and sure enough, we hit that target. So that is what I'm doing from a macro standpoint. We got up to this 145.5, 146. Obviously came back down, and today we have gone through the 3 and the 8 day moving average. We'll see if we get some follow through, but that is very much what I was banking on, if you will, for this most recent drubbing in rates, collapsing. So we'll see if it gets follow through, but it has come into my price target. So that reversal is definitely working, and I have my macro stuff that I'm obviously explaining as well. I'm just showing you an example, but getting back into the theme here of what I do in the morning. So what's moving, I've got bull setups that are working. ZM yesterday, which is Zoom communication, definitely was extremely strong open, price target of 91.46. It hit that today. This is a coronavirus type of speculative play, but it's also in my IPO list that I adore and always go to when the market's bullish. That happens to be the strongest sector, IPO and IGV. IGV is very, very heavily weighted with Microsoft. And we're not going to talk about Microsoft and Tesla today, which I have written about as potential petering out levels, but I haven't seen any reversals yet. So anyway, this type of activity first thing in the morning, BIDU, where do I see it going? Where does it need to stay above? That worked. Netflix, this has been a phenomenal trade above this, above this 330 area on its way to 374. This has broken out as well. So these are plays that I size up in the morning, either as chases or swings. TEVA, another one that I'm very fond of and have been for a while. Gorgeous. I actually mentioned this in one of my videos a few weeks ago. Morningstar reversal needed to stay above the 10 and 30 week. Above 11 is 12, 13, and it's already above 12 today. So there are lots of themes, and I picked the best ones. So I think yesterday I had like 10. Uber is a continuation play. You'll also notice it from the IPO video that I thought would maybe by 2/6 might hit 40 bucks. We're close, but I don't know if it's going to hit 40 bucks in 2 days, but we're really close. 39. Anyway, you see my point. I've been on these for weeks, and they are continuing to deliver very well. TWLO, same deal. Square has been a superstar. I mean, gorgeous. Entered here, this doji, gap up above the trend line, pullback, shallow, breakout, which was a really big deal. It's through 78.70. So these are ones that obviously are working. And Zen was a new one that's got earnings coming up. PCG is a utility, but that's going to have some issues with rates popping. So nonetheless, it's a gorgeous inverse head and shoulder. So these are plays that I obviously identify and present in the trading room with option tactics. Some don't work, by the way. I think GM might be a nice play for EPS, which is tomorrow. They also have Investor Day. Stuff that was working until today, this gap down on a weekly for Starbucks, also China, collateral damage, if you will. Well, sure enough, that's come right back up underside the trend line. Nonetheless, these aren't done. We'll see how it goes. XLV still has risk. The caucus in Iowa, there are no results yet. Snafu, whatever you want to say. We're bouncing, the tide comes in and lifts all boats. So XLV is also being lifted. But there was some heavy put protection coming in, not just XLV, but all the major components, UNH, Cigna, Anthem. Okay, so you get the idea. OLED also, I mean, that's just a terrible looking chart, and it broke. It's a little bit higher today, but that is definitely distribution kind of top, and until it gets back above the trend line, it's not safe. So I go over stuff like this. Now, the fishing plan for today, big market moves. I'm going to share that with you because hopefully that entices you to come in, try the room. Basically, my note to clients was SPX clearly got above my 3270 bullish level, highlighted Monday, by gapping up and opening at 3280. ZIV, which I also use as kind of internal temperature control, was strong, and my bias this morning was full on bull with prediction of a 2% up day, and we're almost there, 1.7% in the S&P, and we still have lots of both momentum and value plays moving, but value is beating momentum today. So that's kind of interesting. And that's what I predicted yesterday. And I have a whole intermarket analysis newsletter for clients that give the 5 chart read interpretations of why I suspected value was going to basically take a turn. And it wasn't just the infusion of liquidity by in China, which makes the world go round. It wasn't just coronavirus fears abating, which, by the way, I think will come back again. It has a lot to do with my intermarket analysis. So there's macro, and then there's my intermarket, and then there's just price action. So price action today is favoring the value players. So basically, if we do retrace even to 32.65, I think we're still fine in a bullish mode. The only way that's going to turn for me, and I let clients know, if we break 32.48. So I'm doing this every day, right? And I think, by the way, if we break 32.48, we're going to quickly go down to 3,200. But I gotta fix that. Currently, the measured move is 33.50. So I'm sharing this with you. I don't do this on Twitter. I don't do this on StockTwits. I only share this with members, period. But I want to give you an idea of what is going on in the morning from 9:30 to about noon during the trading day. And then I do my analysis and my write-up in the afternoon. But these were the themes that I was obviously focused on. Bonds are rolling over on cue. Yields are rallying hard. And the things that go along with that, financials, China, and copper as beneficiaries. Gold and miners are not. And I have been talking about miners in particular rolling over for a week now. It's finally happening. And of course, bonds just hit my price target, and yesterday closed underneath it. So yesterday was really just the very first idea of bonds rolling over. So you're getting this info very early. And we still have risks, no question, but I'm not talking about demand right now, which of course is a macro concern. I'm talking about that lovely stimulative financing liquidity that comes in from central banks that basically puts a floor, and that's what I'm looking at as speculative bounces, and they are bouncing huge this morning. FCX is up 5%, for example. Lots I could name off. Momentum is still strong, but within certain sectors that I like, IPO and IGV. So these are strong themes of mine for months. All right. Caveats. We are in Microsoft approaching a 1618 retracement level at 180, and Tesla has just approached outer space. And at some point, you know, it'll give up the ghost like a Tilray, and it won't be pretty. But I'm not playing, so I'm just observing with awe. Anyway, I do expect market volatility to come back in, but probably not until about 33.50. The US dollar is rallying, and at some point, this is going to, you know, wake up emerging market and tech, and they're going to say, ooh, we don't like that. So I'm watching that to see if we're going to spike higher, which, by the way, has been a theme with the dollar WYNN rising to 7. I have been very bullish the dollar for the past since January 20th or 21st, and that was a macro theme that I actually presented, and there were a few others within that time frame that were and have been working pretty well. One, of course, was the dollar WYNN, and let me show you. So right here at this 6.85, and it obviously ran to 7 on Q. The dollar ran to 98 from 97. Short EWG and EWJ, they were also on my list, and they came right down into, let's say, weekly support, which is also, I use moving averages for sure, at least to identify trend changes. This is the 10-week, it's kind of important. 55, and it just failed miserably. So EWG and EWJ were both short calls. That was from a January 21st client letter. XLE came right into bullseye and then basically overshot it. So that surprised me. I actually had 55 as a price target, and that just blew through that. In the meantime, this was what I wanted to kind of go over, were how I saw how I do things in the morning. So I've got the S&P levels that I'm targeting for trading and also staying on the right side of the trend. I have my macro themes that I review. But first thing in the morning, I go over my top chases. And this morning, there were 5. I always basically come up with, whoever wants to chase in the morning, these are the best setups that I have. So for example, this morning, it was WYNN. 200-day, the market gapped up. It had a little gap here from, this is China, coronavirus, and Macau, that just, you know, tourism dropped by like 90%. But the point is, it was extremely oversold, and it looked good. So we got above, this is the 200-day, we got above the 3-day, and there was a gap fill, and this morning it just seemed like a good idea to go long WYNN. Also, Regeneron on coronavirus seemed like a very good chase as well, which it was. Work, yesterday it was ZM, and I have liked ZM for all kinds of reasons because it's part of my IPO list, and it just opened extremely well, and it just kept going all the way up to my price target of 91.5. And by the way, these are set from like June, so this isn't something I just put there yesterday. They tagged and it came back. Today it was slack, and price target has been hit. So it needs to get above, obviously, 23.25 to keep running up to 25.5, but you can tell with option flow, they came in this hard. There is a bunch of activity, although Microsoft still is the one to beat. Speculation with, you know, folks working from home has bid this up. The other two that I really like, and again, I keep going to the same well, no shame there, is BYND. I like this pure play, not the burgers per se, but just the stock. It did break down versus break up. By the way, this was a long call for my IPO video. You will notice I had this from 75 to 140. It got close, 135. Anyway, I was still bullish until it broke the 3 and 8 and came right back down. And then this morning, I'm like, as long as it stays above 104, ideally on a swing, but obviously the open range, it has potential for high. And this has been an area that has been saved before. It was much easier the first time. So when this came down to basically 34 bucks, it was a perfect on a dime reversal. And the reason I really liked it is because it came down to the 10-week. Now, the second time I wasn't excited about it because it broke the 10-week. And I said, this has, you know, right here, 30-week. And it tagged very briefly, gave us a nice tail, stabilized, and then went higher. But this has a large short percentage, I think 54%, not as much as Peloton, but nonetheless, it has gotten defended again. So it did break down through up over that $34 level, but it has a nice tail, stabilization, and as soon as it got above this 33.87, 33.5 level, I was suggesting this as a long. So these are the ones that were chases. Let me go over some of the review setups. All right, so TEVA, gorgeous. Been recommending this. Now we're finally above the 50-week, right up to 12. Above 12 is 13, and so on. Remember, Berkshire Hathaway is invested up around the $24 area. I'm sure they're hedged with lots of nice options, but nonetheless, I'm just saying there is value in this company, and I like this as a bottom fishing play. Snap have been recommending this long for a while, and it has broken out. It is still very, very bullish, and my price target has been 21. So I don't see this as a problem. TWLO is another swing play. You'll get all this from the IPO video from a few weeks ago, so this is not something I'm announcing new. My total long idea was above 100, and it stayed above, and it got right up to the 200 day, and now it's moving higher into 134. I think it gets some, you know, interesting activity here at 134. Earnings are tomorrow, however, so no edge, no idea, but a nice run up into earnings. Square has been another one, absolute freak of nature. This doji, so everyone was trying to play this, expecting it to kind of break above. It didn't, it just kept going down. Once it actually got above, this was the doji at $65, $64.55, I was like, that's a nice long. And it did pull up into weekly resistance, shallow pullback, that was a shakeout, and then boom, wicked bullish all the way through 73, which was a double level of resistance, and it's still moving higher. It's one of the, you know, fintech darlings, but it's heading up to 83. That's price target. NEO, people don't like this one. I like this one. It's done a really good job, although it's an under 5 play with lots of volatility. In other words, the average true range is not for the faint of heart, but it's done beautifully, just beautifully. So I have no problem recommending some of these IPO plays that have continued to do well. And then some new ones that were not really new, but recent because they're running up into earnings was Zen. I thought it would get up here, this 95 before earnings, but it only has another day and a half. It's still been a great runner. And LB, when this got above the 10 and 21, and then it ran to the trend line, it stayed above it, 200, shallow pullback. This was the announcement that its CEO, by the way, the longest running CEO, so now Berkshire, Warren Buffett is now has the crown of oldest, let's just put it oldest CEO, and that he was retiring and selling in part some assets. This has been a great play, and there aren't any really great plays in retail land. So those were kind of some review of setups. You'll see some others that haven't really completely taken off, but ZS, it did beautifully, and now it looks ready to launch. Anyway, I could go on. You can see my video from IPO land. It hasn't changed. The Netflix we talked about. For giggles, I'm just going to add in here, Microsoft is now at a 161.8 retracement level. We'll see if there's any slowdown or reversal. And Tesla is just an oh my God, right? So there's nothing here I can do or say. I don't even know where I came up with a 940 price target, but I am not going to possibly top tick this one. It looks just like a Tilray did before Tilray obviously shrieked, and the weight of longs getting out did that. So that's basically the Tesla story. By the way, Tilray looks like it's warming up again. Nice. We'll talk about pot stocks another time, but right now they're not above my safety zone, which is to say this 10 is the gray, the blue is 21. They need to come together. They just have to come together. All those charts that I just showed you, look for the 10 and 21. When they cross over, it's a much higher probability trade. BIDU broke that 10, got right back up, but it's underneath the trend line. Still, that's a K-Web play from the China group, and that is dangerous because they still have problems. But it is absolutely a chase, if you will, from all of the moving averages, just a bounce candidate, if you will. So I'm not excited so much about the China plays as I am the IGV and IPO plays. IGV is very misleading. It is heavily into Microsoft, weighted by Microsoft. The IPO plays are, I would call them more pure plays, and that's what I am, interested in grabbing. These types of incredible moves, and for option traders, are just dreamy. By the way, GSX is online education. They're doing really well. TAL and EDU. They're trickier though. I mean, look at that crazy Ivan kind of move. Not smooth, not even a little. So getting to new ideas. By the way, I did have some that did not work. Yesterday I suggested an Apple short below this 312, and obviously we popped right back up. We'll see how it closes. I still think we might be putting in a distributive top as there is some weakness here in momentum, but the price is clearly sideways. OLED, which is related, still looks terrible to me. I'm not at all really excited about that long. Big gap down underneath the 50-week and a trend line. And SBUX, which is also a China play, but it's also a gap on the weekly below the 10. Today it has U-turned, literally. So bullish above 89.30. Those did not work. New setups that those were new ideas. The new setups that are also wedge-like and going to pop one way or the other are SDC, which is Smile Direct. This is another one that was in my IPO and a fabulous play because it got above the 10, not the first time, which means it wants to try it again, and then it just exploded. It's gone sideways. Now it's formed a wedge. Puppy is likely to go higher, especially in a bullish market. The VEEV, like this. Now this threw a lot of folks off. That was just a nasty little trick. But VEEV is still very bullish. And I'm looking at this not just as a new setup today because it got out and it's staying out, but it needs to continue, really continue. Earnings aren't until March. Again, these IPO plays, this hasn't triggered higher, but it looks incredibly productive. BYND, it's trying. It really is. It hasn't done anything wrong. It's still above the 10 and the 21, but very volatile. And then speaking of volatile and speculative, because BYND is definitely in that category, but this LJPC has a fabulous scoop pattern. Have been on this actually since, oh gosh, somewhere in here. can't, oh, here it is, 547. So once this moved above 547 and then this is a shallow pullback, this looks like an $11, $12 stock. So there are stocks as well. This didn't really have an option flow, which was why I wasn't interested in it. But guess what today is just full of options. These didn't even exist. They were just, they're still very, very illiquid relative to other plays, right? So Slack, you get tons and tons of contracts. There's just no issue. But LJPC has a great story and it has a great chart, but not a great options market. All right, so that's what I wanted to basically show you. There is a bullish, no question, backdrop. I thought 3,300 would come in with some sell programs and then more specifically maybe selling calls and push this down into 3285 area. It's just not happening. It is incredibly resistant right now, and it popped. This was a little dangerous here, but if I also look at it from a potential 30-minute inverse head and shoulder, that's just the neckline, and this can run to 3350 pretty easily. So that's what I do in my trading room. I wanted to give you an opportunity to see, and then of course invite you in. There's stuff to do both from a chase standpoint as well as swing and trend trading, stocks, options, futures, and I'm here every day. So I invite you to come in to my live trading room and profit from some macro to micro trading. Keep in mind that this includes everything that I offer now. So I have done a one product deal to make it simpler, which means you get all of my stuff and me for $350 a month. So that's the live trading room, market timing calls. This is, obviously I'm looking at market moving news for those who like to chase. It's low risk entry with stop loss and profit targets for both stock options and futures. You get to work through value and momentum trade ideas with me every day. I will personally share my macro to micro trade setups using risk defined options, and this is all yours if you are interested in this type of trader education support and analysis. I hope this is of interest, and I invite you to join me in my live trading room.